Imagine standing in the heart of Berlin at noon, the sun blazing above you, and suddenly, in an instant, it disappears. No eclipse, no clouds, no explanation, just a hard-edged circle of darkness stretching over 300 kilometers, turning day into night in the blink of an eye. This wasn't science fiction. It happened just 6 hours ago over Central Europe, on the 17th of March 2026, at exactly 12:42 UTC, and the probability of this occurring naturally is effectively zero. Germany, France, and northern Italy experienced a total blackout of solar irradiance, but what unfolded defies every law of physics we know. In Munich, weather stations recorded a temperature of 18 degrees Celsius, a pleasant spring afternoon. 4 minutes later, as the shadow swept across the city, the mercury plunged to just 3 degrees Celsius. A 15-degree drop in 240 seconds, thermodynamically impossible. The atmosphere doesn't cool that fast. Even blocking the sun doesn't make concrete and asphalt lose their heat instantly. The data tell a different story. The heat wasn't just blocked, it was actively removed. Something or someone extracted it. Cross-referencing the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory data with NASA's Deep Space Telemetry revealed the same impossible anomaly. The culprit, an object we've been tracking for months, known as Three-Eyed Atlas, located 240 million kilometers away, near Mars' orbit. Yet somehow, it cast a shadow, with perfect geometry and astonishingly cold temperatures, across Earth's surface. A typical comet is a messy cloud of dust and ice, producing soft, fuzzy shadows. But this object carved a near laser-precise circle over Europe. The implications are chilling. This is no passive celestial body. This is a mechanism. The shadow's physical properties challenge everything. The solar orbiter, positioned between Earth and the Sun, detected a transient obscuration event that blocked 99.8% of visible light, while allowing high-energy X-rays to pass through completely. A rock, ice, or dust object cannot behave this way. It should block all wavelengths. What we saw is a frequency-specific filter, a selective energy manipulator unlike anything seen in nature. The sequence of events is equally perplexing. 2 minutes before the shadow hit Berlin, local magnetometers in Potsdam registered a sudden magnetic spike, jumping from 48 to over 600 microteslas in just 3 seconds. By 12:42 UTC, the temperature plummeted, and 3 minutes later, the Galileo Global Navigation System experienced synchronized clock errors across 6 satellites. These anomalies were not isolated. NASA's Deep Space Network in Madrid, Germany's Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics, and the IceCube Neutrino Observatory at the South Pole all recorded the same results. Rapid cooling, magnetic surges, and high-energy neutrino flux perfectly aligned with the shadow. Think about that for a moment. Thermal energy wasn't just blocked, it was removed. Concrete, asphalt, and air cooled in minutes, as if a massive, invisible machine were extracting heat at a continental scale. Shadows on Earth are normally fuzzy because the sun is a disk, not a point. Yet reports indicate a transition from full sunlight to total darkness in just 1 second, with edge precision down to 3 meters. For a tiny object 240 million kilometers away, to achieve this is beyond any optical capability humanity can produce. It's as if Three-Eyed Atlas wasn't blocking sunlight, it was manipulating it. But that's only the beginning. While Europe experienced darkness and cold, radio telescopes detected a phenomenon invisible to the naked eye. The hydrogen line at 1,420 MHz, a quiet, universal frequency, suddenly erupted with a coherent pulse repeating every 1.6 seconds. This wasn't random noise. It was a mathematical pattern, Fibonacci sequences, embedded across an entire continent, induced in every device, from smartphones to GPS systems. The magnetic spike was modulated, converting the European power grid into a massive receiver, effectively transmitting a message through our own infrastructure. Pause. Let that sink in. A celestial object, 240 million kilometers away, cast a shadow that froze the air, blocked sunlight, manipulated radio waves, and used our power grid to communicate, all with geometric precision that defies physics. If this were natural, we would have discovered a whole new set of physical laws overnight. If it's artificial, the implications are staggering. And even as you watch this, the next alignment is being calculated. In just 19 days, Three-Eyed Atlas will line up with the Sun and Earth again. What happens then could redefine everything we understand about the universe. As the shadow lifted, leaving a Europe chilled and unnervingly silent, the story was far from over. While the sunlight returned, something remarkable had already unfolded beneath the surface. The radio spectrum, previously calm, erupted with a pattern that was not random. Across Central Europe, the quiet hydrogen line at 1,420 megahertz suddenly lit up with a pulse repeating every 1.6 seconds. At first glance, it seemed like interference, but this wasn't noise. This was a signal embedded with structure and order. It mirrored the Fibonacci sequence, a universal mathematical pattern appearing in everything from seashells to galaxies. And for the first time in history, we saw this sequence broadcast across an entire continent, perfectly synchronized with a thermal anomaly overhead. The implications of this cannot be overstated. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't natural. Three-Eyed Atlas had not only manipulated light and temperature, but had also induced electrical currents in millions of devices, from cell phones to GPS receivers. The modulated magnetic spike effectively transformed Europe's infrastructure into a massive receiver. For a fraction of a moment, the continent itself became part of a message. Scientists are calling it a handshake, a deliberate attempt to interact with humanity using tools we didn't even know could be manipulated from space. The sophistication required to pull this off is staggering. Consider the sequence in more detail. The signal didn't simply repeat, it followed a palindrome. Numbers climbed, peaked, and then reversed in perfect symmetry, and right at the midpoint, there was a pause of exactly 3.14 seconds. Pi, the universal constant connecting a circle's circumference to its diameter, was encoded in this signal. In other words, an astronomical object, 240 million kilometers away, had precisely calculated a sequence that combined mathematics, physics, and the electromagnetic response of Earth itself. It was language, it was intelligence, and yet, the most alarming part is not the complexity, it's the scale. The shadow over Europe covered roughly 70,000 square kilometers, targeting the densest, most technologically connected areas. While the world focused on darkness and the sudden cold, the devices beneath the shadow were effectively scanned. The induced currents, the pulsing of the grid, the alignment of the radio frequencies, everything points to a diagnostic operation. If this was a test, then Three-Eyed Atlas was not simply watching, it was learning, mapping our energy networks, measuring response times, and probing the limits of our technological infrastructure. This isn't a theoretical risk, it's an observable reality. 3 independent observatories documented the sequence before data feeds were abruptly shut down. Effelsberg in Germany, the Max Planck Institute, and NASA's Deep Space Network all recorded the exact same data, confirming the anomalies. And just as quickly as it appeared, the information vanished from official channels. Maintenance screens replaced live telemetry within hours, leaving scientists and the public in the dark about what had actually transpired. The rapid censorship alone speaks volumes about the magnitude of the event. Meanwhile, telescopes worldwide are tracking the object in real time. Observations indicate it's accelerating in ways that cannot be explained by gravity alone. In the hours following the shadow, Three-Eyed Atlas altered its trajectory by 0.04 degrees, tiny in numerical terms, but massive when you consider orbital mechanics. It's moving faster than standard celestial physics would allow, and is on a course that will bring it closer to the Sun than Mercury during its next perihelion approach. Scientists are scrambling to model its path, knowing that the next alignment with Earth in just 19 days could replicate or escalate the first event. Pause for a moment and consider what this means. If the initial shadow was a calibration, a test, the next alignment could be far more consequential. The precision required to target a specific continent at a specific time, accounting for the ionosphere's conductivity, the angle of solar incidence, and the dynamics of our electromagnetic environment, is unprecedented. Whoever or whatever is behind Three-Eyed Atlas possesses knowledge that rivals or exceeds our own. This is not random cosmic behavior. This is intelligence acting with intent and technological sophistication that is literally astronomical. Even now, scientists are bracing for the next demonstration. The shadow was not an attack, but a message. And a message, it seems, can be read in cold, in darkness, and in mathematics. By scanning our systems and interacting with our infrastructure, Three-Eyed Atlas has begun a dialogue, not in words, but in patterns, in induced currents, in thermal manipulation, and in absolute geometric precision. It is a level of control that until now existed only in theory or in laboratories on microscopic scales. Now, it is happening across a continent, using Earth itself as a medium. And as the sun returned over Europe, leaving only the memory of darkness and the chilling temperature drop, one thing became clear. We are not just observers anymore. We are participants. The universe has handed us a puzzle, a handshake from the unknown, and every calculation, every measurement, every observation is a clue to the intelligence behind it. What remains to be discovered is how far this test goes, what it is measuring, and why Europe, why now, and what awaits us during the next alignment. To understand the full magnitude of what just happened, we need to zoom out and examine the geometry. The sun is massive, 1.4 million kilometers across, while Earth is tiny in comparison. Three-Eyed Atlas, at an estimated width of just 20 kilometers, somehow cast a shadow 300 kilometers wide over Europe. Think about that for a moment. It's like holding a grain of sand at arm's length and expecting it to block the sun entirely. Light wraps around objects naturally, scattering and diffusing, yet the shadow over Europe was impossibly sharp, with edges defined to within 3 meters. The physics here don't add up. A normal comet or asteroid produces a soft gradient of shadow. This was a precise, perfectly sculpted absence of light. The only feasible explanation is that Three-Eyed Atlas isn't simply a rock drifting in space. It is acting as a lens. Not a conventional lens that focuses light, but a negative lens, or deflector shield, redirecting sunlight away from specific regions on Earth. Imagine a structure or field that bends photons, cooling the ground below while letting high-energy radiation pass through unimpeded. That's exactly what the solar orbiter detected. Visible light and heat were blocked, yet X-rays streamed freely. This selective filtering implies technology, not nature. Now consider the scale of control. To bend light with such precision requires stabilizing the object while it orbits the sun at 30 kilometers per second. It must maintain exact alignment across hundreds of millions of kilometers. The margin for error is microscopic, and yet it executed flawlessly. During the shadow event, European observatories noted an additional phenomenon. The light curve of Three-Eyed Atlas itself dimmed by 40%. It effectively vanished from our telescopes at the precise moment it cast the shadow. Why? Because if it's redirecting sunlight to create darkness, it also redirects light away from observers. In effect, it cloaks itself, using the very laws of optics against us. This behavior mirrors what we see with metamaterials on Earth, substances engineered to bend light around an object to render it invisible. But whereas we can do this only at microscopic scales in laboratories, Three-Eyed Atlas achieved it across astronomical distances. The implication is staggering. It's a level of engineering we cannot hope to replicate, using principles that are both optical and thermodynamic. Speaking of thermodynamics, the cooling itself was unprecedented. Under ordinary circumstances, even a total solar eclipse drops temperatures slowly. The atmosphere retains heat. The ground doesn't instantly chill. Yet, over Europe, temperatures plummeted 15 degrees Celsius in 4 minutes. Asphalt and concrete, materials that retain heat exceptionally well, dropped 8 degrees in the same time frame. This is not passive shading, it is active energy manipulation. The shadow didn't merely block sunlight, it extracted thermal energy. A field, wave, or other unknown mechanism must have interacted with matter at a molecular level to suppress thermal vibration. The precision, the scale, the control, it all points to intelligence and technology rather than natural forces. Three-eyed Atlas was targeting a specific landmass at a specific time of day, choosing Europe with intent. It wasn't a random alignment or a natural coincidence. The event covered the continent's most data-rich areas, suggesting that the object is not only aware of human activity, but also capable of targeting it. And the signals tell the same story. While Europe experienced darkness and cold, radio telescopes picked up structured pulses encoded in the hydrogen line. The Fibonacci sequence and pi were broadcast simultaneously across millions of devices. The grid, modulated by the magnetic spike, essentially became a continent-wide receiver. It's as if the object used Europe as a giant sensor, scanning our infrastructure and mapping our technological capabilities. This was not a message in the traditional sense, it was a diagnostic, a planetary MRI performed remotely, using the shadow as the probe and our own instruments as the detectors. Every observation, every piece of telemetry, every satellite glitch reinforces one conclusion. Three-eyed Atlas is not a comet. It is a technological entity with the ability to manipulate light, heat, magnetism, and electromagnetic signals across astronomical distances. It can cloak itself, target specific areas, and extract energy from the environment with pinpoint accuracy. And the clock is already ticking. In just 19 days, the next alignment approaches. If the March 17th event was a test or a calibration, the next pass could be exponentially more powerful. The shadow over Europe was the first handshake, the first glimpse of its capabilities. But what happens when it shifts from scanning to full operation? The consequences could redefine everything humanity thought it knew about space, physics, and intelligence beyond Earth. With the March 17th shadow still fresh in memory, scientists are now focused on what's coming next. The calculations are clear. In exactly 19 days, Three-eyed Atlas, Earth, and the Sun will form a near-perfect line. If the first event was a calibration, a test of precision, then the next alignment could amplify the effects exponentially. The timing is critical. The object has demonstrated the ability to manipulate the ionosphere, induce currents in the power grid, and broadcast structured signals across multiple nations simultaneously. Doing this during the alignment maximizes its leverage, using Earth's own magnetic and atmospheric properties to extend the reach of its influence. The trajectory changes observed after the initial shadow are particularly alarming. Three-eyed Atlas has altered its orbit by 0.04 degrees in hours, accelerating in ways that cannot be explained by gravity alone. Orbital mechanics tell us that such a change requires thrust, meaning the object is not passive. It is actively maneuvering, capable of adjusting its path to achieve exact geometric alignments. When you combine that with the selective blocking of sunlight, the extraction of thermal energy, and the induction of electrical currents, you begin to realize we are not observing a comet, asteroid, or natural phenomenon. We are observing a system engineered, intelligent, and capable of action at a scale humanity has never encountered. The implications for Europe, and indeed the world, are profound. The first event targeted the most densely monitored and technologically connected region of the continent. Power grids, satellites, and communication networks were all affected, and the object shadow acted as a conduit for information transfer. The Fibonacci and pi sequences embedded in the magnetic modulation suggest a deliberate attempt at communication or, at minimum, a sophisticated scan of our infrastructure. By inducing currents in our devices, the object effectively turned the continent into a massive receiver, mapping energy flow, signal density, and response dynamics. Every piece of evidence points to intention. Nothing about the March 17th event was random. The precision of the shadow, the simultaneous modulation of multiple systems, and the exact timing with the solar noon indicate a level of knowledge and calculation that borders on omniscience. The science community is struggling to keep up, both because the physics involved is beyond current human capability and because the data streams are now heavily censored. Within hours, telemetry from the solar orbiter was replaced by maintenance screens, live feeds disappeared, and satellite observations were suddenly restricted. This rapid blackout underscores the magnitude of what we are dealing with and hints at the fear and urgency this intelligence has inspired among global agencies. Yet, despite the censorship, independent measurements and multiple observatories confirm the anomalies. Ground-based magnetometers recorded a spike from 48 microteslas to over 600 microteslas in just 3 seconds. Temperatures plunged 15 degrees Celsius in 4 minutes, with the ground losing 8 degrees in that same brief interval. High-energy neutrino fluxes were detected from the exact direction of Three-Eyed Atlas, coinciding perfectly with the shadow. Radio telescopes picked up structured signals on the hydrogen line, embedded with mathematical constants and prime number sequences. 3 independent, unrelated observatories, NASA, ESA, and European institutions, documented the same events. All of this points to a chilling reality. This is intelligence, not chaos. Three-Eyed Atlas is not just observing, it is probing, interacting, and analyzing. It has demonstrated control over visible light, thermal energy, electromagnetic fields, and communication networks. It knows exactly what it is doing, and it understands the mechanisms of our technology and our planet in ways that humans do not. The first shadow was a handshake, a diagnostic pulse sent to gauge our response. But the next pass, with perfect alignment, could move from passive observation to direct interaction or even influence on a scale never witnessed before. The countdown is already underway. Astronomers are redirecting every telescope in the southern hemisphere to track the object's approach. Every orbital calculation is being updated in real time. Satellites, power grids, and communication networks are on high alert. And yet, as the data streams continue, there is still one question that haunts scientists and policymakers alike. If the first event was a handshake, a test, then what will the next one be? Will it be a message, a demonstration of power, or something entirely beyond our comprehension? Every minute brings us closer to a moment of unprecedented uncertainty. The alignment is not just astronomical, it is strategic. The next pass will test the limits of physics, technology, and our understanding of intelligence in the universe. And the world will watch, waiting to see what Three-Eyed Atlas intends to reveal next. As the days tick down toward the next alignment, the world stands on the edge of an unprecedented scientific and existential moment. What happened over Europe on March 17th was not a random anomaly, nor a natural celestial event. It was a deliberate display of precision, power, and intelligence. The shadow, the extreme temperature drop, the modulation of electrical grids, the induction of structured signals, all of it confirms one reality. Three-Eyed Atlas is operating with an understanding of physics and technology that exceeds our own. It has scanned the planet, mapped our energy networks, and proven that it can manipulate not just light, but the very infrastructure humans rely on. The implications are staggering. If the March 17th event was a handshake, a test of its abilities, the next alignment could mark the first time humanity faces a fully operational interaction. Every system that depends on electricity, satellites, or communication networks could be affected. Unlike natural disasters, this is targeted, precise, and repeatable. It is not bound by geography, weather, or chance. It is governed by design. The intelligence behind Three-Eyed Atlas is not passive. It is probing, calculating, and learning, using the planet itself as a laboratory. Consider the technological scope. The modulation of the ionosphere, the precise timing of magnetic spikes, and the induction of currents in millions of devices demonstrate a level of planetary scale engineering previously thought impossible. The ability to embed mathematical sequences such as Fibonacci and pi into our electrical infrastructure is a method of communication, a way to interact with a civilization remotely. It is both a diagnostic and a demonstration of capability. Essentially, Three-Eyed Atlas has shown that it can measure, map, and manipulate human systems from 240 million kilometers away. This raises critical questions about intent. Why Europe? Why target the power grid? The answer seems to lie not in aggression, but in information. By using our technology as sensors, the object has effectively conducted a planetary audit. It has measured our infrastructure, tested our response, and assessed our capacity for handling anomalies. This is an intelligence that does not need to threaten to understand. It simply gathers data, analyzes, and prepares. And the next pass, with perfect alignment, may reveal just how far its influence can reach. The scientific community is mobilizing, yet even with all the telescopes, observatories, and satellites turned toward it, the situation remains beyond our full comprehension. The sudden data blackout following the first event underscores the magnitude of the discovery. Live feeds were censored, real-time telemetry replaced with maintenance screens, and independent verification became almost impossible. This coordinated restriction shows just how seriously this intelligence is being treated and the length some institutions will go to control information. For humanity, the stakes are profound. We are facing a form of intelligence capable of interacting with our planet at a scale we have never experienced. The next alignment is more than a celestial event. It is a test, a measurement, and potentially the first true interaction between human civilization and a superior extraterrestrial intelligence. Everything we observed on March 17th, the shadow, the cooling, the electromagnetic manipulation, the Fibonacci and pi sequences, is only the beginning. As the clock counts down, the world must watch carefully. The alignment in 19 days will determine not just what happens to Europe, but how humanity understands its place in the cosmos. This is a moment to stay alert, to record, to analyze, and to prepare. The precision, scale, and intent of Three-Eyed Atlas challenge everything we know about physics, engineering, and intelligence. What we witnessed was not an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated, and potentially historic interaction. And so, as you follow the unfolding events, remember this: the universe has just made contact, not with a voice, but with action. It has shown the capability to manipulate our environment, our energy, and our understanding of reality itself. The next alignment is coming, and the outcome could redefine the boundaries of science, technology, and the very notion of intelligence. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and watch closely, because history is unfolding before our eyes. If you want to stay on the cutting edge of this unprecedented event, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us as we track every moment leading up to the next alignment. You will not want to miss what happens next.